All right, so I think we're ready to go. So, good morning and welcome to our Sage 300 CRE Aatrix Forum session for 2017. My name is Jeanette, and I'll be your instructor slash guide for the morning. We're going to be covering the Aatrix year-end forms, basically just from a processing standpoint. I am going to go over kind of a little overview about what Aatrix is. I want to talk a little bit about the registration and how you update. We're going to be jumping into the software pretty much right away to talk about in accounts payable, the 1099 forms. We're going to review the vendor setup first, and then we'll go through a 1099 run and take a look at the screens and what the forms look like. We'll also then jump into payroll. We're going to review the W-2 setup. We're going to look at running the W-2s. I am going to give you a demonstration on merging data files for those of you that have separate folders for executive payroll versus field payroll. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the ACA forms. Now, one thing about the session today, the session is only an hour, and we've got quite a bit of information to cover in this hour. So I will take breaks, probably one break after accounts payable, after the 1099 forms, to answer any questions that you might have. I'll do another question session after the W-2 forms, and then again at the very end. If we run out of time, I'll remind you at the end that you can send your questions into OnPoint, and they will send them on to me, and I'll be happy to answer any extra questions that you might have. All right, so those of you that might be new to Sage 300, what Aatrix is a third-party software that that interfaces with Sage, and it lets you generate some of your mandatory state and federal reports that you need. You can actually print all of these reports or forms at no cost. So this is what you're going to use maybe to do your tax deposits, run your quarterly reports, run your for state and federal. And then at year end, this is what you're going to use to print your 1099 forms, your W-2s, and your ACA forms. So the printing of the forms, like we have here on the slide, is free. So you can print as many of them as you need, different types that you need. If you are going to have Aatrix do the e-filing for you, that's where the cost comes in. There is a fee for that, and we'll look at that and look at those charges as we go through the forms. There are over 330 state and federal forms. They've increased that. It used to be 250. It's now up to 330 different types of forms that you can print. Now, if you are, excuse me, if you are doing your e-filing through Aatrix, there will be a registration that you need to go through. And so what I've got in the handout, if you take a look at page 2, there's the start to that, where you need to go out to Aatrix's website. They're efile.aatrix.com, and then you'll click enroll there, and you'll start filling out the screens. It's going to want a login name. You'll need to provide that when you do your e-filing, a password, and then it will start asking you for different account information and contact information and phone numbers, and then even company information. So if you take a look again at the slides on page 2 and page 3 of the handout, and then you'll also need to go in, once you finish the initial part, you'll need to go ahead and continue with the eFile Center, logging in. And then if you take a look at page 4, it's going to start asking you for some security type questions. And then as you get to page 5, it's going to want, again, some company information. You want to verify that that is all correct. There is an authorization form that you're going to need to sign and fax back to Aatrix. And then you'll also need to use, there's buttons at the top of that screen. This is on page 5. You need to add your bank account. If you are having Aatrix do your payments, make your payments for you, you need to add your bank account information. You also need to click on Update Filing States. Make sure that you've got the states entered that your company is going to be filing taxes for. There's also some additional requirements for things like PIN numbers that you'll need to provide as well. So there is a whole section there that you'll need to go through if you're brand new to Aatrix to get set up so that they can process your information. And I've got most of the screenshots there for you in the handout. Now, additionally, every once in a while, when you go either through accounts payable or payroll and you're doing the forms, it's going to come back and ask you to update. Because Aatrix maintains all the forms, federal and state, for all 52 state areas, those change every once in a while. So you may, one day go in and you jump right in. The next day you go back in to do something else and it's telling you it needs to update forms. So what you want to do is go ahead and click on the automatic update as long as you're connected to the internet. If you're not connected to the internet, you'll need to download the update, and then you'll have to manually update a computer that has the internet access. So at least one of your computers has to have access to the internet in order for this to work. And then what you'll see on the next screen is a list of the forms that have changed. So it'll go through and it'll compare what's on your system to what the current forms are that they have on their system. And if there's any mismatch, it's going to show you which ones need to be updated. And once that list is complete, you'll get buttons at the bottom where you can hit the next button and it will go ahead and update. Now, the one thing that it does do is once it's done with this update and you click the finish button, it takes you back out of the forms area. So then you have to start the tasks, federal e-forms or state e-forms again. And once you do that, then it will take you to the next screen in the task. Okay, so that's a little bit about what Aatrix is, how to get yourself set up with Aatrix so that they can, if you want them to, they can e-file your stuff. And then what happens if there is an update to any of the forms, that you'll be prompted to do the update. All right, so the first application that we're going to go into is accounts payable. The first thing that I want to show you is under company settings, AP settings. I want you all to remember that there is a year-ending date in the settings area, one for your fiscal year and one for your 1099 year. The 1099 year, this needs to be a calendar year, and you need to make sure that this is updated to the current year. Okay, thanks, Cheryl. All right, what is going on here? Okay, hold on a minute. A little technical difficulty here. Can you see it now? No. Okay, just a second. Why is this? Okay. Okay, does everybody see it now? It's gone again. Okay. Okay. This, if I click resume share, it takes me right back to the Aatrix window. Just a second. I so apologize, you guys. I thought we had this worked out from before. As soon as I go to the AP screen, okay, I'm on the AP screen now. Can everyone see it? No. Dana, help me. Share.
Hey, yeah, so we saw it a couple times there, but I'm not sure what you did that let us see it, but there were a couple times when you had done something that
Can you
let it
see
show.
it now? You see
Nope.
it now?
Nope.
No. I'm doing the same thing we did last time with the Alt tab.
Right. Yeah.
I had the windows open at the bottom of my screen.
Yeah.
Hold on.
You did do some, at one point we did see it, so there was something you did that worked properly. Oh, there you go. Whatever you just did, what'd you do there?
Okay, but I'm seeing the Aatrix update forms.
Yes.
Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
And as soon as I try to switch over to
The actual
payable,
application. Yeah.
the actual application, that's where it goes.
Right.
Let's see.
Hmm.
Pause. Pause. Wait a minute. Your screen sharing is paused. Hold on. Let me,
Do you want to get off? You can get off and then back on if you want. That maybe that'll.
let me shut all the screens off here and start. It says, please move this window away from the shared application. What does that mean? I don't know. Okay, let me start.
Okay, now you've got a window partly over that Aatrix update form, or you had something, so a square of some sort.
Resume the share.
Now it's gone.
It's gone
we can't
again.
see anything. We don't see anything. Yeah.
Stop the share. Share the screen.
Are you sharing the whole window, your whole desktop, or just the screen?
The screen.
Yeah, I would probably try sharing your whole desktop.
Hold on.
There you go. Now we see it.
Do you see the?
Sage 300. Yeah, and you scroll down. Yeah,
You
we see
do.
that. Uh-huh.
So you're seeing it now.
Yep. Oh, now well, kind of. Saw a little
Is it
black
gone
box.
again?
Um,
It says, please, again, up at the very top, it's saying, please move this window away from the shared application.
yeah, I would, if you're not sharing your whole desktop, you should just share your whole desktop.
All right, let me get rid of this. But I don't have a share desktop. I have share screen, invite others, and join audio. I don't have a share desktop.
Okay. Well,
let me see.
That's interesting.
Share screen. Okay, do you see the share screen now? Oh, this is terrible.
No.
Share the screen.
Okay, now I see the Aatrix update form.
Okay, so now.
Yep, okay, so I see your tabbing thing. I can see the 3 little windows. Okay, now I see Ring Central.
All right, so now.
No, yep.
Do you see this?
Yeah, I see your, whatever that is for Windows, yeah. Yep, now I see your application, Sage 300. Yep. Now I see a list of things on the side. There's a little scroll bar.
All right, let me just go open up AP. Do you see AP coming up?
Looks like it. Accounts payable, timeline construction, or Timberline construction. It says Sage 300 at the bottom right.
All right. All right, so let's go through AP, and then I'm sure we'll have troubles again with the payroll thing.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
don't go anywhere.
I won't
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Okay. All right, everybody, I'm so sorry. Sorry for that little interruption there. Okay, so the first thing, again, that I want everyone to remember is that under AP settings, again, there are two dates here that you need to be aware of. The first one is the year ending date, which is your fiscal year end, and that should match up to your general ledger. Second one is your 1099 year end date, which should be a calendar year. Now, because AP is done on a calendar year, there's no month end close, so it never prompts you that you're not in the current month. It doesn't even prompt you that you're not in the current year, because it also stores next year amounts in the master file, which is why when you get to the end of December, you can go ahead and move forward into 2018 and start entering invoices and writing checks. It will update into the next year field. You want to be sure that this is at least 2016, and if it is, you need to close the year. If it's not, if it's still sitting at 2017, you're in good shape. After you're done with your 1099s, then you want to go ahead and run the close year program, which is here underneath tasks. There are two of them at the bottom of the drop-down. Now, the other thing that you should be aware of is the vendor setup. So if you're in the 1099 preparation report and you see that you are missing some vendors on this report, or there are some that shouldn't be there, under Setup Vendors, on the 1099 Settings tab, this is what controls whether or not they will print a form. Now, if you forget to check mark the vendor receives the form 1099, not to worry, because it will automatically accrue when you print checks down here in the 1099 amount paid field. So notice here are the yearly buckets. You have this year, you have last year, and you have next year. So it, by default, is going to try to print your forms off the this year bucket. You can also print off of last year. So again, those dates in AP settings are important that they're shifted correctly. The other thing to be aware of is this form type. It will default to a miscellaneous 1099 non-employee. If you need a different type of form for them, you need to change the bullet. And you'll need to make sure that you're selecting the correct form type when you run the 1099s. The vendor's tax ID will go up here under recipient's tax ID. This will either be like a federal or state ID, or it can be a social security number. You can also put a name here in the vendor's or the recipient's tax ID name field. So if you have a vendor that they're doing business as a different name, you'll put their name here, and then up here under name, you'll put the name of the company that they're registered as. And then when you print the form, it will print this name with a DBA after it, and then the name out of the vendor name field. If you have a vendor that needs multiple forms, you have two choices. You can either set up separate vendor IDs with different form types marked, or you can use the same vendor ID and keep track of what the dollar amounts are for each form. And then with audit setup activity turned on, you can come in and modify the amount that's going to print on the form. So you'll print one form, you'll come back in here, you'll change the type, you'll change the amount, you'll print the next form. So again, two ways to do it. A single vendor ID using audit set of activity, or multiple vendor IDs. All right, once you have you've got your list of vendors that need a 1099 form, you've run the 1099 preparation report, which is here under, let's see, under miscellaneous reports, miscellaneous 1099 preparation. Once all of that looks good, then I would recommend that you do a test run on your forms first before you print the actual forms, just to make sure that everything is coming out correctly. So forms are located under Tasks, Government e-File and Reporting, Form 1099. So what it's doing right now is it's just double checking that everything is correct. Okay. If you are doing a brand new run for the current year, you'll select New 1099 Report. If you need to reprint any forms, you can use the Saved option, and that will give you a list of your saved reports, and you can select the one that you need. Okay, we're going to do a new form. Now, on this screenshot here, if you are marked in 1099 settings to store 1099 totals by GL prefix, you will see these first set of fields here at the top of the screen. If you are not marked in settings to store 1099 by prefix, totals by prefix, you will not see this up here at the top. You still have the option to do a 1099 run by vendor, meaning it's going to print a 1099 form, one for each vendor for a grand total, or you can switch it to by fiscal entity, and you're able to select the GL prefix that you need to print the forms for. So what we're saying here is that you can have one vendor that you use for multiple companies or divisions within your company, and you can still print a separate 1099 form for each one of those companies. Or you can do one that is grand total to the vendor. The form itself will default to a 1099 miscellaneous. The drop down here will show you how you can select either interest or dividend. It'll select the current year, and you can, like I said before, you can go back and run off of a previous year. So if you go ahead, let's say, and you close your year prior to running the forms, you can still select 2017. This will show as 2018, and then you'll see here the prior year would be 2017. The minimum that you want to create will probably be, I think at least it was for last year, it was $600. So anybody less than that will not print a form. If you are doing this by vendor, or if you don't get this top part of the screen, you will need to put in your federal ID number. Since AP does not store that number within the application, but it does store it on the prefix. So if you were to select by fiscal entity, this would actually pre-fill off the prefix. Otherwise, you have to manually enter it. All right, once you have this screen filled out, you'll hit the next button. It's going to give you a list of vendors that meet that criteria, meaning that the form type is marked correctly and are over the minimum that you've selected. Down at the bottom, you have a couple of buttons here. You can reselect everybody if you have selected none. So you could redo the toggle here. I'm just going to go ahead and do one person for now. So just make sure, again, that you've got all the correct vendors selected, and then hit your next button. Then on this window, it's just telling you that it's ready to start generating the forms. So on this screen, all you have to do is click Generate. It's just reminding us here that any information on the next screens that get changed, It's only going to be used to run the 1099s. So any changes that you make, it's not going to keep those. We're going to do a test run only, so I'm going to change the bullet here on this setup wizard. It defaults to start processing all your 1099s. If you are doing a test run, you can tell it to do just the first 25, or you can test run all your vendors. And then you click the next button. It shows you your company's federal ID. It brings up the payer information, and again, this is something here. If you make a change on this window, this does not get written back into the data. So again, that previous window was warning us that any changes that we make on the screens, this is what it's talking about. The default here for the payer type is you are filing for your company employer, which is, I'm sure, what everybody's going to be defaulted to. So right here, just hit your next button. If you have any state information that needs to be printed, there'll be a place for you to put your state and tax in on this window. Otherwise, hit your next button. We're defaulted to not electronically send 1099s, meaning you're going to e-file them. This doesn't have anything to do with the e-filing. This is where you're going to, instead of them mailing them the form, it's going to send them a file for their 1099 form. So you would have to have email information on the vendors for this to happen. Okay, so we're going to leave this as no for now. The ID numbers, the recipient ID numbers, you can select to truncate, and then down below, if you're not truncating, how do you want to deal with the zeros? Okay, just hit next again. Multiple data files. For the 1099 example, we're just going to use the single data file. We're not merging. I'm going to demonstrate the merging files together when we get into payroll. So we're going to, on this window, we'll leave this as no. I use a single data file for this tax ID. Okay. At this point, it's going through, is compiling the data for either the full run or the test run. Okay, we're in test drive, so it actually tells us that. And then it's going to give us a list of all of the vendors that we've selected for us to do some verification before it actually gets to the form. So when you get to this window, you should see a list of all vendors that you've selected, which on the example here, I've just selected the one. It's going to go through several steps here of verifying the information that's going to print on the form itself. So I have a next button here up at the top of the screen. You're going to click that. It goes through several sections on the form itself. So it's verifying that all the information or the amounts, as you can see, so here let me go back one step. Okay, so it's verifying their tax identification number in that step. The next step is the name and address fields. So you can see over here in this blue area where it's at. The next step is all the income boxes, meaning the boxes over here on the right-hand side of the screen. It's also verifying your filing state, the income and taxes withheld, depending on the form. And once that's complete, you'll get this screen that talks about their pricing. And we'll talk about that when we get to the next screen in here. So it looks like they're having a special right now with the $1.59 per vendor, which is different than the $1.99. So they've got an early special going on. Looks like. Okay, so here, this is where it's showing you what the charges are going to be. And one thing I want to point out. So this is per vendor. It's going to give you a total of the recipients, which are the vendors, and it's going to show you what the price is per person if you're doing a complete 1099 e-filing service, which means you're going to let Aatrix do the whole thing. They're going to print the forms, they're going to mail your forms, they're going to do the e-file to the government. So that's $1.99. That's the normal, but right now it sounds special going on at $1.59. But also notice that there's a minimum charge down here. So if you have less than their minimum, which I believe is, gosh, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I'd have to check that. But the minimum charge is $24.95. So if you don't have enough vendors to make up that minimum, it's still going to charge you at least $24.95. Now, if you change your bullet here to other options, notice that there's no charges left up here at the top. Notice that until we start checking off what we want to actually do, until we get to e-filing, we can uncheck that if we don't want to do it, it's still free. So you can print your recipient copies, you can print your federal copies, you can print your state copies, and it's still at no charge. It's only two options here in the middle for the e-filing that they do charge something. Now, one other thing I want to point out too that I didn't mention at the beginning. These charges are separate from the packages that Aatrix offers. So you can purchase a report/form package from them that will take care of all the other reports except except the e-filing of these forms, the 1099s and the W-2s. So as an example, I use Aatrix for my own little company, and it's just me. And so I purchased the package for 1 to 5 employees. It's like $69 a year. I can run as many reports and e-filings of my tax deposits, my quarterly reports, my federal 940s, 941s, and it doesn't cost me anything more. But when I do my W-2s at the end, my W-2 at the end of the year, it does cost me the additional $24.95 because I have them do the complete e-filing for me. Right? So that's something else that you may want to check into. It may be cheaper because I believe the price per form is $7.95, and depending on how many forms you run during the year, that can add up. So the pricing for the package thing is can be save you a lot of money. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave these checked here just for the printing, and I'm going to select next. And that's just telling you what the benefits are for doing the complete 1099 services. It can actually save you some time and even some money, again, for postage and envelopes and all of that. All right, this just shows me what forms it's going to print for me, whether I want divider sheets between the forms or not. This is the forms it's going to print for the federal and the state. And when I hit next on that, it should bring me up to the first copy of the first form. Right, so here is the form, and you can see here up here at the top. So this is how many forms are going to print. I've got 7 forms, and this is the first one, the federal 1099. So right here, it also shows me here how many pages. I can go ahead and I'll just next through these so that you can see how it brings them up. So up here at the top, you can see what form you're on and how many pages it's going to be. And then you can use the buttons here to print, and then use the next button to go on to the next form. So this is going to step me through. Oops, I don't want to actually print that. Okay, so here's each of the state forms. Here's the recipient form. And the payer form. And then lastly, the instructions, which you probably don't need to print those out. Okay, so you're through with your test run. You're going to come back through and run this again to print the live stuff. On page 18 in your handout, you'll get if you're doing the e-filing, you'll get the screen at the top where you can agree, or if you want to go back and double check things again, there's a double check button that you can select. Once you click agree, then you'll get the screen for the filing options, and you can click the e-file button. And that then will bring up a screen where you can log into Aatrix with your login and your password, and then it will step you through the rest of the e-file options. All right. We're going to go ahead and this. Okay, Tina, I hope you're there because we're going to go back, and I'm going to open up payroll next.
Okay, I'm here.
Oops, payroll. Do you see payroll starting?
Yep, looks good so far.
Okay, so we're in, okay. All right. Just because we're we're kind of a little short on time, I am going to mention the quarterly reporting. I put documentation in the handout. We're going through a state quarterly report, and I've also put in, we're going to go ahead and skip to page 24 in your handout. We'll take a look at filing a 941. So I'm going to go ahead and come down to the federal e-filing and reporting section. Okay, we're going to start this as a new file. Now, the new forms for 2018 are not out here yet. And I just want to point that out when we get to the W-2s. I'm going to be using the 2016 form because they don't have that form activated yet. I am going to go ahead and use the 2017 941, and I'm going to select, we're going to pretend to do the 4th quarter here. So this is the federal quarterly tax return, 4th quarter 2017. And I'm going to go ahead and just run this for a couple people. And then I'm going to go ahead and generate. Okay. And we'll just dismiss the advertisement here. Okay, so you're going to get an option here just telling you to make sure that you're reviewing everything. making sure that your totals are correct. And what I didn't do, you know what? I don't have any numbers in this. I'm going to go ahead and restart this. I'm using the construction sample data. And sometimes their totals are not up to date. So let's run this for the third quarter. We'll just run everybody. Okay. Do we have money in here? There should be some money in here, but okay. I'll just put money in here. Not sure why that's not showing up with dollars in there. Okay, what you need to make sure is that you're going through and correcting all of the red to make sure that there aren't any errors. Notice too that there are 2 pages in this on this form. You want to make sure. Let's see. Oops. You've got this checked. Let's see. We'll just go like that then. Fine. Make sure that you've got some information in here. Okay. All right, and then once the form is correct, oh my, 4120. What are you telling me here that you don't like? All right, put that in there. Okay, then you can go ahead with the next step. Right, and then once you agree, again, it's going to bring you back to the e-filing screen, or you can click double check and it will take you back and you can recheck the form. Right, so again, quarterly reports and for state and federal, you can print them through for free. You can file them for a charge. You can e-file them with Aatrix for a charge, or if you've purchased the package, you can again through, and it will go against the package price that you paid for. All right, W-2s. First thing we want to look at is modify forms, W-2 forms. Aatrix does use the information off the W-2 setup on here under modify forms. Now, the software comes with one default form already in the system. And Aatrix will use that, or if you delete this and create a new one, if you've only got one form out there, Aatrix will pick that one form up when you run your W-2s. If you're creating a new for each year, you can do that. If you've got more than one form out there, Aatrix will see that, and when you run the W-2s, it will window that will ask you to select the form that you want to use. Right, for our example today, we're just going to go with the default. On the first tab, It defaults to 0, employee minimum of 0.00. You need to put at least a penny in there if you do not want employees that did not work during the year to print a blank form. So at least have a penny in this employee minimum field. Then on the amount, the default fields appear at the top. There are defaults for the federal information as far as federal taxable, the tax, and then the Social Security and Medicare. So actually boxes 1 through 6 are already filled in for you. The only thing that you need to worry about here is what you want to print in boxes 11, 12, and 14. Now 12 is reserved for the special types of reporting that you need to do. And a good example of that is the 401k. The code for the 401k is a D, and then over here you will use either the deducts button to pull the deduction for the 401k into that fee, or if you've got multiple 401k deductions set up and you need to combine all of those in a run, you can create a formula that will add those together, and then you will use the formulas button, and that's what you'll select is the formula name. Okay. Now these if you use your help button, let me get to the codes here. Here are the codes inside of inside help. So depending on what it is that you need to print in box 12, you will select the correct letter that goes with that amount for the federal government. And so you can see here is the D is for the simple 401k. Now, if you need to put something in box 14, like a employer health plan, what you'll do in this first section of box 14, you can use the text button where you can type in, we'll do it that way, type in the abbreviation that you want to print next to the amount. And then over here in the amount, you will select, let's see, pick that one. You select, again, the deduction ID goes with that particular item. All right, once you have your boxes modified for the W-2, you'll click the Save button and then Close. And then again, we're going to come back here to Federal Filing this time. This will be a new report. And again, because they haven't released the 2017 form yet, I'm going to go ahead and use the 2016 form. And if you need to do test runs on your forms prior to the actual run, you can go ahead and use the 2016 form. Just do it as a test run. Even though the form itself is going to have the wrong year on it, you can still check amounts that are printing in the boxes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just select one person for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and generate. Again, the warning about the company information. I'm going to go ahead and do it as a test drive here on the Setup Wizard. It shows me my federal ID. My company information is filled in. Again, this is pulled out of Aatrix, but any changes again that I make here will not be written back into my Sage data. I'm going to leave this that I'm filing for my company. I've got my tax information, the taxes that I am reporting on, along with my tax ID numbers.
Jeanette, there was a question about would you select all?
Yes, you would. I just selected one just for speed. Okay, under data verification, normally the defaults are fine. If you do want to use control numbers on your W-2s, if you select yes, there's a place later where you can enter a starting control number. And also, if you want employees to receive their their W-2 forms electronically, you can answer yes. Those employees will need to have email addresses on them. So here's where you can put in a starting control number. If you selected that, check the 941 checkbox, and then hit next. In this first example, I'm going to say no, I use a single payroll data file for this tax ID. It's telling me I'm in a test drive mode, so I'm going to say OK to that. And again, here we have the verification window. So it's going to go through several sections here as I hit the next button to verify information on the employee. So it's checking the employee information. It's checking if I selected that I wanted people to get this electronically. It's going to verify email addresses. We don't need to do anything with HIPs. It's verifying my state wages. Okay, and it's showing me this advertisement for a special. Then again, it's showing me without the special, this is how much it's going to cost for each employee if I do the complete service with a minimum of $24.95. So if you are in a test drive mode, you want to select the other options, and you want to go ahead and just go with the print your employee W-2 so that you can verify. I'm going to go ahead and select the federal. Actually, I'll pick it that way so we can see a sample of the W-2 and the W-3. All right, and then hit next, and next again. Okay, I'm getting this box because I said I wanted controllers. And we'll just see this here. Actually, I'm going to switch this and do it this way because I gave it a starting number. No divider sheets. This is showing me the forms it's going to print for me. Once you do this a couple of times, you'll know when you need to stop and make a change. Otherwise, you're going to just be clicking the next button all the way through those defaults. So for those of you that have run W-2s several times with Sage and Aatrix, this should be pretty familiar to you as far as clicking through those screens. All right, here is the employer copy. So here's the W-2 form. There are actually 3 reports that we're going to get here. It shows us how many pages there are. So because I only did one person, it's 1 page. And I'm going to cancel that. We're not going to actually print. Here is the federal W-2, one page of that. And then here's the W-3. And I've got samples in your handout of the W-2 and the W-3 form for you. And again, they say 2016. That's because Aatrix hasn't released the 2017 form yet. But you can go ahead and use that form and start doing test runs on your W-2s whenever you'd like. Okay. Now, if you are doing, if this was the real run and you're doing e-filing, you would get the screens, the screen to actually e-file. And you would click that, and it would actually take you to to the login screen to Aatrix, where you would enter in your login ID and your password. Okay, cancel out of here. Now, for those of you that have multiple either data files or data folders, an example of this may be where you have separated your executive payroll from your field payroll. And that's the example that we're going to use today. So I'm actually going to use the on page 40 where you have multiple data folders and you need to combine those to do your W-2 run. Now, and then actually in both examples, they actually kind of run the same. So what we're going to do here first is we're going to come in to the federal e-filing. And we're going to run the W-2s again. And again, I'm only going to pick up, this time I'll take 2 people. So I'm running this first in the construction company. And I'm still going to do a test run this time. And this time when I get to the multiple payroll data files window, I'm going to say, yes, I use multiple files for this ID. Right? And when I get to this screen, I'm going to use the export button. And I'm going to write down the last 4 digits of this just so that I remember which is which. Okay. And because I don't want anyone else to export because I want it to be secured. So I'm going to put a password on it. And I'm going to say OK. And once that's done, I'm going to click Close. Then I'm going to switch over to the company where I've got my executive payroll stored. And I'm going to come back to Tasks, Federal Filing. W-2s again. And I'm going to select just the first 2 guys here. I'm going to generate. Do another test run. software in here. Okay. And again, I'm using multiple payroll data files. I have to select that in order to get to this screen where I can again do an export. And 46, and again, I'm going to put a password on here. And then I'm going to OK that, and I'm going to close. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come back to my construction company. That's where the company name and address and all of that is the way I want it. I'm going to run the federal e-filing again. W-2s again. And it doesn't matter what I select here, as long as I select at least one person to get past this screen. Okay. Again, I'm going to do a test run. All my information is right. And again, this time I'm going to, again, still, I'm using multiple files for this run. And when I get to this run, this window, I'm going to select the two files that I created. So this file and this file, and I'm going to say merge, put them together, merge them together. And it's going to come through and it's going to show me this now. You're going to see some duplicate information here, and that's okay. Go ahead and just click continue on this window. And what we should see when this window comes up is 4 employees, 2 from my construction company and 2 from my executive payroll. So there they are. So again, you can use this to merge multiple data folders together. It can be used for 1099s. It can be used for W-2s. It can be used for 941s, for quarterly reports. Any of the forms that you're doing in Aatrix, it will have that window that you can tell it that you're doing multiple data folders. Now, you can also do multiple data files. So if you have named files turned on, it will prompt you as you do each run for the master file and the current file that you want to use for that run. And I have examples in your handout. So on page 38 is the sample of 38 and 39 if you're using named files. So you will actually run these again separately, just like I did. First on like the example I've given using admin for the executive people, you'll use the admin master and the admin current, and then you'll run it again using field master and field current, and then the third time you run it, you'll merge them together, just like I did with the separate data folders.
We have a question about, can you merge multiply databases for Federal Form 940?
I believe you can, yes. As long as we're the folders use the same federal ID, you should be able to, yes. Okay, were there any other questions on, that brings us to the end of W-2s. Any other questions on the W-2s or the 1099s? Now, in your handout on page 43, I've got paper, the paper stuff that you need to be aware of. Most of this is going to be on blank paper, plain blank paper. A couple of the forms will require perforated 4-part paper. So the, excuse me, the employee copies of the W-2 require that, and then the 1099s, the payer and recipient copies need to be perforated 4-part paper if you are going to print them yourself. If you're going to let Aatrix do it, if you're going to use the complete service, then you don't need to, you'll do your test runs on blank paper. You don't need to buy the perforated paper. Okay, I'm going to try switching back to the which I don't even see. Oh, there it is. Okay, Tina, can you still see my screen?
Yep, sure can.
Okay. Okay. So just again to review, as far as the forms are concerned, 330 potential forms, federal and state. No cost to print any of the forms. So if you're doing all the printing yourself, so that part is free. The fee is for the e-filing. So here are, I've just got listed here some of the federal forms that are available, and then also the state forms. We're going to take a quick look at ACA here in just a second. Here's the paper. Right. So the ACA forms, what we're going to do today is just look at the actual printing of the forms. I've got a screenshot here of whether or not you need to produce the ACA form. So, excuse me, this has to do with larger employers. So if you have fewer than 50 employees and they're not self-insured, then you don't have to. You do not have to run any forms for the employees or to the IRS. But if you have 50 or more, then you do need to run the 1095 and the 1094. If the employees are self-insured and you have less than 50, you need to run the 1095. If there are more than 50, you need to run the 1095C. So this chart here gives you, kind of shows you what forms you need to actually produce. And then in your handout, I have pulled in KB 70726, and you have access to this on with the Sage customer portal. If you go to the knowledge base and put that KB number in, it will bring you up to the KB that I've got on page 44 in your handout, where it explains kind of who needs to file, who doesn't, how to get some of these reports out. And actually in your handout, the stuff that's in blue, if you did this on a color printer, there are links in the KB that will actually take you to videos that will walk you through the setup and again the actual printing of the form. Let me jump back here. There's a couple things I wanted to point out. Can you still see my screen?
Yep, sure can.
Okay. Let me actually, hold on. There we go. I want to get rid of this. Get back here to payroll. Can you still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so a couple of things as far as setup is concerned. In PR settings, there is an ACA settings button where you can go in and set the defaults. So if you have know what your default coverage code is, you can lock that in, use the drop down to set your value. If you have a share cost, you can lock that in, a safe harbor code, and origin of policy code. Again, drop down to set those all up. The other thing that you should be aware of too is on the setup of your pays, there is a checkbox here for including hours for this particular pay ID in the ACA hours total. So make sure that you've got that marked correctly. Then additionally, on the employees themselves, there is an ACA coverage tab where you can lock in a status, whether they are a full-time employee or they're not exempt from ACA or they are exempt. So you'll need to determine their status, the coverage code. This should have defaulted over from your PR settings. And then if you need to report on them and the dependents, there is a button here at the bottom where you can go employee by employee and you will see the codes. And then here you can add dependents to the employee. Save that. And then close out of this window. All right. Now, printing of the form. This again is under Tasks, Federal e-file. Right. The forms for 2017 again are not out there. So we'll just look at this first one here for 2016. And I'm just going to change the year to 17. And we'll just pick the first person on the list. Normally you would select all here. And we'll go ahead and generate. Okay. Again, it's just reminding us about the company information. Okay, we're going to do a test drive again. On page 49 in your handout, I have a note there at the bottom. This is one of the places that it doesn't get saved. So every time that you run these forms, you'll need to come in and enter the contact information. It doesn't save it. And this is mandatory. So if I try to get out of here without it, it's going to tell me that I can't. So just highlight that contact information at the bottom is, these are mandatory fields. Okay, then you're filing for your company. The truncation as far as the Social Security number is concerned, there's a note here at the bottom. All the Social Security numbers will display on the screen. It's only going to apply the truncation to the printed copies of the forms. So don't worry, we've marked it to truncate. We'll go ahead like that. But then we get to the next window and we see the full Social Security number. That's not a bug. All right, it prompts for being in the test drive. It's pulling in the information. So see here, it's showing me the full Social Security number. The screen has a little bit different look and feel than the previous screens that we saw in the 1099s and the W-2s. This is going to go through several areas. So the screen's divided up into multiple parts here. There are 4 steps that we're going to go through to verify information. It's going to, here at the top, we're in the employee contact information area. It's going to list out all the individuals that you generated a form for. And then down below, it's going to show you the information that you can come in and modify. So it's got the stuff kind of from here at the top. It's put it down here at the bottom. And then over here on the side, what you need to pay attention to is on the right lower corner. If there are any mistakes, it's going to show those in red down here, and you need to correct those before you can move on to the next window. Right, so as you go through, you'll need to go through every employee actually. Just use your arrow key or click on the employees and go down the line and then correct any errors in red. Then click the next button. It'll take you to the policy code. If there's any mistakes or blanks, you need to correct those. So it'll show you down here in the bottom in red. Click next. On this, it wants to know how they're covered. And we're just going to select that he was covered for the entire year. So notice that it's listed the employee, and it's got a field for each month in the year. If they're a full-time, all-year employee, just select all, and that will take care of the checkboxes, the rest of the checkboxes. If they are only a part-time or they came on during the year, you need to check the boxes check the boxes where they were covered, the months that they were covered in. Right, once that's corrected, click your next button, and this is the electronic delivery, meaning are you going to email them forms, or is Aatrix going to email the forms instead of mailing it? So if you want them to be electronic, you check electronic, and then you need to make sure that you've got an email address in here. Okay, once that's corrected, hit the next button again. And then this shows us again the cost for complete e-filing, or we can change it to other options. And for right here, we'll just go ahead with employer copy. Or actually, let's go with both. Undo the e-filing. It's going to show us the forms that we're going to see. Okay, and then here is there are 3 that it's going to display in our sample here. So here we've got the 95B.
One sec, we have a question. We
Okay.
have a high turnover with employees coming back several times throughout the year. Does this ACA track the rehire dates, or does this have to be done manually?
I'm thinking it has to be done manually.
Okay, thanks. Oh, sorry, I missed one too.
Okay.
Does this system notify us if the email is rejected or not working?
No.
Okay.
Because at this point, they're not connected. It's not, no. I think they probably won't they'll get a rejection notice from Aatrix, because Aatrix will be the one that will do well, that's a darn good question. It depends on how they're doing it. If they're doing the complete service with Aatrix, then I would think Aatrix would get the rejection notice and would notify them that they have a bad email address. if they're the ones that are doing it electronically, then I don't think that they'll get a rejection in their like an Outlook that there is a bad email address. So at the time that they run through this process, they're not going to know that they've got a bad email until the system tries to send those emails. And at this point, up to this point, it hasn't tried to send them. Does that make sense?
Uh,
I
I
hope.
think so, but I don't. I guess we'll have to know if we get any more questions on it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I've got examples of the forms again in your handout 53 and 54. Okay. Can you still see my form, Tina? Or my
Yep, sure.
screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that takes us through the actual of the ACA forms. I think you're going to find, at least from what I've heard from people last year, they had to do a lot of manual entry in some cases to get the information to print out on the forms. So you may or may not have to go through those steps of entering the actual ACA data prior to running the form. All right, just some reminders here at the end. We've kind of run over, and I apologize due to technical difficulties. Just a reminder that the printing of your forms, the printing is free. You do need to do some setup as far as the W-2 forms are concerned. The other thing that I want to point out here is you're still able to manually print quarterly forms in Timberline, not through Aatrix. So there is a modify forms, quarterly forms option still there, and you can run a Sage version of the quarterly form to verify totals if you'd like to before you run the actual Aatrix form. Right. So what Aatrix is going to actually charge you for, if you decide to sign up for one of their package deals, which can save you quite a bit of money. It's priced on a per employee basis, so however many employees you have, that's where your price is going to fall. This allows you to run as many state and federal forms that you need, and even e-file your normal payroll forms. It doesn't apply to the W-2s or the 1099s. Those two have a separate charge outside of the package deal. You can, when you register with Aatrix, you can have a credit card put on file or a bank account that you want the charges to be pulled from, and then every time you run any of your forms, if you're not doing a package price, it'll charge it against the credit card, or you have to enter the credit card each time you do it. If you're letting them do your tax deposits, it'll use the bank information that you've set up when you registered with Aatrix when you first got started. And the W 1099s is a separate charge. Now, I just from a personal note, I use Aatrix for all of my own payroll stuff, and it just works like a breeze. And it's so much cheaper. I was having a payroll service do my payroll for me, and they were charging me hundreds and hundreds of dollars a year to run my payroll, to make my deposits, to run my forms. And then when Aatrix came out and I saw the difference, I was stunned. So I took it over myself, and I use them to do my tax deposits and run my forms, state quarterlies, federal 941s, and W-2s, and they've been great. So um, if you're not using them for the e-file stuff, you might want to consider that because I mean, it's a few clicks of the mouse and you're done. Okay, I want to thank you for joining us, and I so apologize for the technical difficulties earlier that we had. Um, if there's not any more questions for right now, I'm going to let you guys go. If you think of anything, please send OnPoint an email with your question. Tina will forward that on to me, and I will be very happy to answer any extra questions that you might have. So again, thanks for joining us, and if I don't hear from you before the end of the year, please have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you so much.